Hello, and welcome to the Student Advice Service information video on examination reviews. My name is Gemma Douglas, and I'm the Advice and Welfare Manager at the Student Advice Service. I'll be co-delivering this session today with my colleague, who's now going to introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Simona, and I'm an advisor and knowledge coordinator at the Student Advice Service.
So the Student Advice Service is a service for all Cambridge students, undergraduate and postgraduate from all 31 colleges. We provide confidential advice and support to students on any issue they might experience during their time at Cambridge, whether that's academic or personal. One of our biggest areas of advice giving is exam related. So whether that's exam worries, exam access arrangements, adjusted modes of assessment, exam failure or underperformance, or intermission related, we're here to help. So who is this session for? This session is for students who have failed or underperformed their exams and experienced issues with the conduct of the examination. This session is for all students studying towards the award of the University of Cambridge, whether it's undergraduate or postgraduate. By the end of this session, we hope that you'll be able to do the following: explain the meaning, issues with the conduct of the examination and give examples, get a sense as to whether you have experienced any of these issues, establish whether you have a case to present, explain how the application process works and possible outcomes of successful application, determine what type of evidence is required to support your application, get a sense of what information your application should contain, and where you can go for further support. What is an examination? The term examination relates to any assessment that is submitted and receives a mark that counts towards the University of Cambridge award. What can you do if you fail or underperform? The first thing is to determine why you might have failed or underperformed. Did you fail or underperform due to an issue with the conduct of the examination? And if so, what were those issues? So how would you present your case in this situation? Presenting a case that relates to issues with the conduct of the examination is called applying for an examination review. Applications for examination reviews can be submitted by yourself to the Office of Student Conduct, Complaints and Appeals, also known as OSCA. What types of issues can students raise using the examination review procedure? If you're aware or experience an issue while sitting your exam, you could raise these concerns with the informal procedure within 5 days of sitting your exam. This would be done by submitting a representation to the examiner form. Examples of the types of issues you may consider raising within those 5 days include: there were issues with large amounts of external noise while sitting your exam, a disturbance in the exam room, or a mistake on the paper. On raising issues formally within 28 days of receiving your results. So on receiving your formal result, you may be concerned there was a procedural irregularity in the examination process, that there might be demonstrable bias or the perception of bias, or for students studying towards certain postgraduate degrees, that serious illness or other grave cause may have impacted your examination result. There is also an additional ground in raising concerns around the withdrawal of academic provision. This ground is specifically for students whose assessment results have been adversely affected by either industrial action or by COVID-19. If you wish to raise a concern under any of these grounds, you can do so formally within 28 days of receiving your result. Students are expected to adhere to this timeframe. Although if you have good reason for delaying the submission, you can explain this in the examination review form and provide supporting evidence. The university will assess each case that's submitted individually. Reasons that might be accepted for submitting a late application are, but not limited to, illness or family emergency. Seeking advice and not having known the correct process are not usually valid reasons for delaying submission. I'm now going to hand you over to my colleague Simona, who is going to talk in more depth on these grounds.
Thank you, Gemma. We're now going to look at these grounds individually. The first ground that Gemma mentioned was the procedural irregularity and what evidence would look like. So it could be that during the examination or the assessment, there were issues with large amounts of external noise. That could be something that is considered a procedural irregularity. Or that there was a mistake on the paper. Another example could be that the viva was not conducted as described. So for example, the dates of the viva were changed at the last minute, and this might not have allowed you enough time to prepare for the examination. If you have recommendations for reasonable adjustments and these were not put in place or followed during the examination or other form of assessment. Some examples of evidence could be a letter confirming that there was a noise or disturbance during the exam, a letter confirming there was a mistake on the paper, evidence that the date of the viva was changed at the last minute. Or you could submit your student support document showing that approved reasonable adjustments were not made during the examination. Students can also submit an examination review if they feel there was demonstrable bias or perception of bias during the assessment process. For example, do you have reason to believe that your paper was not marked anonymously and or that the examiner assessing your work may have been biased towards you? Some examples of evidence of this could be the examiner's written comments, which could be interpreted as bias, or the description of the behavior of the examiner during the viva or other oral presentation. The third ground on which students can submit an examination review is serious illness or other grave cause which has clearly impacted upon the examination itself and of which for sufficient reason the examining body were not aware. This ground can be used by students studying towards the following degrees: AD degree, PhD degree, MD degree, ND degree, VET MD degree, MSc degree, PhD degree, MLit degree, PhD degree by special regulations, MPhil degree by dissertation, and students studying towards a certificate of postgraduate study. It applies only to students on the above-mentioned courses whose preparation for the examination and or their performance in the examination was affected by illness or other grave cause. Example of evidence would be a letter from your GP, college nurse, or any other relevant medical professional. It could also be a death certificate confirming the passing of a family member or a close friend, a doctor's letter or hospital admission to evidence special family circumstances which had an impact on the student's preparation or on their performance during the examination. Finally, we're going to be looking at the withdrawal of academic provision, examples of this, and what the evidence would look like. As Gemma mentioned earlier, this ground is specifically for students whose examination results have been adversely affected by industrial action or by COVID-19. Examples of evidence would include dates of the industrial action and the academic provision that was not received as a result of this, or a summary of what material was or was not covered during the industrial action, or that was affected by COVID-19. It could also be evidence of action or lack of action taken by the department to compensate for the withdrawal of the academic provision. So what do you need to make an application? Once you have identified that your concerns can be raised using this process, you can submit an examination review within 28 days of receiving your formal examination results. The application should include a completed and signed application form. You can download the form by accessing this link, www.studentcomplaints.admin.cam.ac.uk/examination-reviews. The form is on the right-hand side of the page entitled Examination Review Form, Formal Results Issued. You should also submit supporting evidence if this is available, and a copy of your student support document if you have one, and if you require reasonable adjustments during the process, or if the submission deadline was extended in line with recommendations made on your student support document. What would be the possible outcome of a successful application for an examination review? Some of these outcomes would be to require the examining body to re-examine the candidate in conditions considered appropriate to the examination review officer, and this could include to require the examiners to examine or re-examine the candidate, to require new examiners to re-examine the candidate, to permit the candidate to submit a revised dissertation or other assessment, to require one or more additional examiners to make an independent report or reports on the work submitted by the candidate, or to require the examining body to set the candidate new examination papers or other assessments. Now I'm going to hand you over back to Gemma, who's going to talk about the final part of this information video.
Thank you, Simona. So what happens if your application is unsuccessful, and what would your options be? If the application is unsuccessful, you can request a review of this decision on the following specific grounds. There was a procedural irregularity that occurred during the reconsideration. In other words, that the process was not followed during the reconsideration of your examination result, or that the decision was unreasonable, or it could have been that you have new available evidence that for good reason wasn't available at the time of making the application. For example, a medical letter that for good reason could not have been obtained when the application was submitted. The deadline to submit a review decision is 14 days from the formal decision being issued to you by the university. Information on how to submit a review decision made on an application for the examination review, along with the appropriate form, will be provided with the formal decision letter. What happens if you're unsatisfied with the outcome of the review decision? What would your options be in that case? You could make a representation to the Office of the Independent Adjudicator, also known as the OIA. To do this, you'll need a completion of procedures letter from the university. This letter would be provided to you after submitting the review of decision by the university. The OIA is an independent body that will consider if the university followed its procedures in considering your case and whether those procedures were fair. The deadline to submit an application to the OIA is 1 year from the formal decision being issued to you by the university. It could be that you feel that your work deserved a higher result. What options would be available to you in this situation? In most cases, this would come under academic judgment, and neither the examination review procedure nor any other formal procedure can be used for academic judgment at the University of Cambridge. If you feel your student experience, including access to learning provision, was affected by COVID-19, please see our resources on examination complaints, or you can speak to one of our advisors. Or it might be that your examination results have been affected by mitigating circumstances, such as illness or grave cause. Please also see our resource on examination allowances, or again, you can speak to one of our advisors. It might be that you feel your situation doesn't fit any of these grounds. In this case, you can speak to one of our advisors who can help you identify the correct process and explore your options with you. Where can you go for more information and support? You could consider speaking to your college tutor about any of the matters discussed that relate to issues with the conduct of the examination. You may also wish to get one-to-one advice from one of our advisors at the Student Advice Service, or you may wish to access the university guidance yourself, which is available on the university's website or on the Student Advice Service webpage on exams. This can be accessed by visiting www.cambridgeu.co.uk/support/advice/academic/exams. I'm now going to pass you back to Simona, who's going to tell you how you can access the advice service.
Thank you, Gemma. To access the Student Advice Service, you can either email us or use our website contact form available on our website. Our email address is advice cambridgesu.co.uk. Our contact form can be found at www.cambridgesu.co.uk/support/advice/contact. Appointments can be conducted in person, over the phone, or video call. We are also happy to communicate with students by email only, if that is what I prefer. Thank you.
Thank you for watching our video today on examination reviews. If you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to contact us. Thank you.